Get ready for a haunting, He-Man. Here's your look at the Mattel Masters of the Universe Revelation Scareglow. Fear his glow. The skeletal specter rules the underworld of Subeternia, trapping the lost souls inside of their deepest, darkest nightmares. But it has been far too long since Scareglow has tasted true fear. If the daring adventurers wish to pass through his domain, they must pay the price. Fear for Scareglow to feast upon, or be trapped in Subeternia forever. Some scary things ahead of us when we have a look at Scareglow. First, though, let's grab the ruler to see how tall the figure stands. Scareglow is a 7-inch tall figure, which works out to be about 18 centimeters tall. Ooh, want some size comparisons? Let's bring in Skeletor now, also from the Masters of the Universe Revelations. We can also bring in the recently looked at Stinkor. And that was him, by the way, it wasn't me. Here he is next to Fisto, and as we've done certainly in the other reviews as well, here he is next to also his Origins counterpart. Could just get him to stand here. Yeah, Scareglow looks good, though. He seems to be slightly more of a leaner build, closer to what we got here from Skeletor. He doesn't seem as big and bulky to, say, Fisto, or to the previously looked at Stinkor either. While I wouldn't say I absolutely love the Master Universe Revelation series that aired over on Netflix, there was things I liked about it, and there was other things I'm not going to get into in this review that I wasn't as crazy about. One thing I was liking, though, about the series is when it came to characters' designs, pretty faithful to the original source material. When you have cases like Scareglow here, for example, looking at it right away that it looked like Scareglow. There was cases where, of course, they deviated and went off the beaten path, like Teela's design, Trapjaw's design, Triclops' design, which all funny enough start with T's. Isn't that rather interesting? Because, again, like the source material was honored in Revelation, that meant translating these characters to plastic figures. Looking at Scareglow like right now, he looks very much like the original Scareglow. Colors, of course, have been changed. They've flipped, in fact, some of the colors around. We're going to talk more about that in a second. And, of course, yeah, they've modernized the suit that he wears, what little there is of it. One thing that also still stays samesies is the weapon that he wields in his hand. He comes with this sort of long-handled blade. Ooh! Should never joke about that. One of these days that's actually going to happen, and everybody's going to be saying I've been crying wolf all these years. But he does come included with that. I mean, that's a neat little throwback to the original vintage toy. While I don't necessarily have the original vintage Scareglow, I certainly do have the Origins Scareglow. That stays pretty true to its original roots. You can see, like, the staffs are very much identical to one another. This weapon that he wields, I wouldn't even call it necessarily a staff. It's a long-handled blade. The blade is a lot longer and certainly a lot deadlier on the newer Scareglow weapon. It's a little more shorter and stumpier on the original Origins Scareglow. And yeah, of course, the color's a little more easier on the eyes on this one. It's not that bright fluorescent green that they went with the Origins. But yeah, very, very true to the original, and I like that. This can fit into his hand, although ironically enough, he also comes with all these other swappable hands, none of which actually help to have this hand being the one that holds the weapon. He either has the scary warning you pointing finger hand, or he also comes with a closed fist. And that's not going to do the job in either of the cases. The other hand, literally actually on the other hand, speaking of which, let's actually get the weapon in his hand, which is pretty easy to do. The plastic I've noticed that they've used for his hands at least are more of a pliable variety. So it's quite easy to pry those fingers away from the palm. As a resulting of that, he can quite easily hold the weapon in his hand, although we may want to just twist it around a little bit. There we go. But yeah, the figure comes with also a couple of other swappable hands. A relaxed hand for this side. And you may also notice one thing that's rather interesting, perplexing in fact, is that the hands are actually using a smoky plastic. You would just then assume, I would imagine, that all the rest of his body is using the same type of plastic. He's not. I don't know why. Very strange. But yeah, they've used a smoky plastic, I guess, to convey the idea that his bones look like they're levitating on their own. And again, it's more of a softer plastic that they've used. The other hand, literally for then this side here, is a closed fist. And again, it's using, it looks to be the same type of plastic. But again, nowhere else found on the body. By the way, his other hand, just in case you guys were curious, is definitely a more warning hand than anything else. definitely looking to display this on the shelf like this, in this pose, in this particular pose. We'll actually just turn the head ever so slightly off to the side. There we go. Now, I got to say right off the bat, this character wouldn't even have to really start saying a full sentence. As soon as he said, "Be warned," I'd be packing my bags and be gone right away. I love the fact that they did give him the pointing hand like this. But again, it's so strange, really, that they're using different materials across the board for this figure. You want more examples on that? Okay, we'll talk more about that. First of all, let's just get this out of his way. We'll put that to the side. We'll look first at Scareglow's head sculpt. And in the head department, no complaints whatsoever. I really like the head sculpt that they gave him. Now, for this, they're using a translucent yellow plastic. This is going to glow in the dark, and we're going to talk more about that later, little later into this review. The sculpt, I don't want to say likeness. It would be strange to talk likenesses for Scareglow. But I do think like the head sculpt is really good. Paint, for the parts that at least are filled in paint, has been handled well. And you can even see like the way they've done the eyes certainly look like they almost got a glowing effect to that. But what's so strange about this, as we get to the final looks of this figure little later into this review, the back of the packaging, I believe, has Scareglow with a fully painted head. They've decided instead to go with a translucent yellow plastic to, of course, glow in the dark, but nowhere found on the figure's body is any more of that same plastic. They've then again used that smokier translucent plastic on his hands, but yet again, nowhere found anywhere else on the rest of his body. It's sort of like three different guys came together to design this figure, and all of them had different ideas. I want smoky, translucent plastic for his hands. Well, I want solid black plastic for his body. Well, I want a translucent yellow plastic for his head. It's very strange. Although when you look at it, certainly from some of the sides, it almost looks as if his body is using that same type of plastic. I mean, when you're lifting it up, even from seeing it from the armpit, why are we looking at the armpit of Scareglow? It does sort of read like it's got a same sort of translucent, smoky plastic, but it's certainly more of a darker variety of that. I think if they were going to be going with that same route of going, because like the hands seem a little lighter, and it may be just the fact that there's a lot less of the material that you can see sort of things passing behind it, because I guess his body's a little bit more denser, even though they are really, I guess, using that same plastic. It doesn't read as much like that for me. It reads more like it's solid black plastic, which I guess is really not the case. And then they've gone in here and they've painted out his bones. Now, when we look at the original vintage Scareglow, where I talked about earlier that they inverted the colors, Scareglow's body primarily is sort of that translucent glow-in-the-dark plastic. They haven't done it here, but what they've done instead is they've painted the bones. Now, the bones, I guess, are painted the same way. You can see that the rib cage is left behind to be the same plastic that they've used for the rest of the body, and sort of the areas in between his rib cage are painted the black. I guess they've somewhat replicated that on the modern take of Scareglow. But again, like, I just feel like his head sculpt is the thing that sort of is a bit of a detractor. It's a great looking head, but I feel like I would have maybe painted it this color here so that the colors at least were similar and samesies. As for the rest of his body, I mean, again, we've looked at already his head sculpt. Wrapped around his head is sort of a Dr. Mindbender high collar cape. The cape is only plastic from the shoulder area of it. When you see it from the back, of course, you can kind of see the place where the plastic stops. And instead, what you get is a felt cape that goes down below. For some reason, like, the cape keeps wanting to get caught in on itself. It's almost like there's got some static cling, but sort of like a felt material that they've used, tattered and torn on the bottom of it. It is really a fitting cape for a character like Scareglow. It just gets a little stuck together sometimes. You can see right there, for example, really prone to getting stuck together, but that's okay. The front of his body, matching to the colors that they used to the top of the purple of his collar, they've got like a lower skirting that's also done in the same material. And up close, you can kind of see there's some really interesting, like a basket woven texturing that they've done to the plastic. So that's really all good. Underneath this, because they've used also softer plastic when we get to the articulation on the figure, putting a split certainly on the side of the skirt does help a lot. That means when you are bringing the legs out, you're going to be getting a Van Damme splits the Scareglow. That would be funny, though, to do that. At least you can pull it off, at least on this side. This other side, I find this one leg area is a little tighter than the side on this one. And also, the split doesn't seem to go as high up. This one seems to go a little bit higher. His boots are decently sculpted as well. It seems like it's a little bit different of a darker purple. Some of the colors of purple don't quite 100% jive when you're looking at it sort of from a distance. The top of his cape is a lighter color or of a reddish purple variety. The lower skirts, the arms, the arm bands, I should say, and like the lower boots are sort of more of a blue-based purple. I'm not really sure why they had to change. I guess, again, three different guys kind of going in there and designing Scareglow. Just a little minor nitpicks. Nothing to the point where I would say it's a deal breaker not picking up this guy. I really like the look of him, but I feel like there's a few little aspects about the character I would have possibly changed. For the articulation and posability on Scareglow, we'll start first of all with his head sculpt. It does rotate all the way around despite the higher collar. It seems to pull off fine. I don't know if that's necessarily supposed to be there, that little smudging on the top. Being the fact he does have a crack running across the top of his forehead and I guess the top of his temple, I would imagine that's supposed to be there. A little bit of a scuffing there in the back, but the head goes down quite easily, up, and yeah, just a little bit back and forth. The upper torso is, though, on a ball joint, so you can rotate that all the way around. And you got the lower waist. It doesn't seem like the lower waist on these figures were ball jointed. When I'm rotating, it almost seems to be a swivel than an actual hinge joint where you can rotate it in a 360. Arms do again come out. And maybe, yeah, again, the more I'm looking at it with the light somewhat running through from the studios here, it kind of looks as if you can kind of see straight through the plastic. And maybe just a case where they've used a denser plastic for the obvious reasons of the mold. Maybe that's why it doesn't look or read at least as much like that smoked plastic we get in his hands. It's close enough, I suppose. Arms rotate all the way around. You can take the biceps, you can swivel those back and forth. Double hinge on the elbows of Scareglow. And yeah, the hands rotate all the way around. For the legs, a little further past the waist there, you can split the legs, bring the legs forward, bring the legs back. There is a swivel. You may not be able to see it. Take my word for it. There's a swivel underneath the skirting. A double hinge on the knees. The boots are very loose on this figure, at least on mine. It may not be the case on everybody's, but it's something I'm just going to point out here in my review. Yeah, a little loose on the bottom here of his boots. Ankles go back and forth this way. There's also a nice little ankle pivot going on there as well. Yeah, good-looking Scareglow. A few, like I said, if anything, my takeaway from this would just be minor little nitpicks. The glow-in-the-dark aspect, which I guess really we should probably look at as well. The glow-in-the-dark head sculpt, all the time while I've been yammering away talking about this character, he has been hopefully absorbing some of the studio lights. So what we'll do right now, we're going to cut the lights and see just how well Scareglow's head actually does glow. With the lights cut off, you can probably see or barely see Scareglow's head actually glowing. What I originally assumed that they used maybe glow-in-the-dark paint for the rest of his body isn't necessarily the case. And I guess that could have been something that Mattel could have incorporated where at least the bones of his body could have also glowed, but at the very least, his head glows in the dark, so that's at least something. If I could just ask a few moments of your time for a second, just draw your attention to the bottom of Scareglow's packaging. Advertised, you'll find, of course, the figures that made up this wave of Master Universe Revelation figures, most of which we've already had a look at here on this channel. 3/4 of what we've now looked at. Fisto, great looking figure. Stinkor, equally cool looking figure. And Scareglow, really happy with how this one turned out. And then, of course, there's Andra. I'm not looking at Andra. I thought to myself, maybe, am I been too hard on the figure this whole time? If I found her at clearance, let's just, $5 somewhere sitting in a retail store space shelf, maybe a Toys R Us, would I pick up an Andra? I'm still settled on the idea of no. Anyways, that's not what I wanted to draw your attention to. Moving the attention away from Andra, Scareglow right next to her. Notice his head sculpt is painted all yellow. Quite different than what we actually get here for the figure. I'm not sure why they decided to go with the more translucent yellow plastic. I mean, obviously, it's to make the head glow in the dark. But what ends up happening as a resulting of it, as good as it looks with the translucent yellow plastic, it sort of does look a little jarring when you compare it to the rest of his body. If they had stuck at least with the photo image, then the yellow of his face would have matched, again, the yellow of his torso, his arms, and his legs. Being, of course, using translucent plastic, it works for the glow in the dark, but I don't know if it works as well to jive with the rest of the figure's body. And of course, when you're talking about the figure's body, while he does have a smokier translucent plastic for his hands, doesn't seem, I'm sort of still on the idea of he has it for his body, but because his body is so dense in the first place, there's a lot more molding to go around. It doesn't read as much. It doesn't read as much as the smoke plastic that they use for the hands. If that was the case, I would have just settled on black plastic. Let's just assume that that's the case and Mattel actually used a smokier translucent plastic for Scareglow's body and we just can't really see it as well. Why wouldn't they just have settled on black plastic anyways? And while we're on the topic of that, if that was the case, why wouldn't they have just done it for the hands? It's kind of giving you that sort of spooky look that you can kind of see through his hands, but not to the point where I feel like they should have just produced it in a translucent plastic. Just stick with the black plastic. And while you're at it, of course, paint also the head sculpt so everything jives. Despite not fully jiving, a Scareglow looks really, really great, especially the way I've got him posed right now with that sort of, I don't know if I would say it's a scythe. sort of a thing he's wielding above his head. And of course, he's pointing for your ultimate doom. He wouldn't even have to finish. Like, he would just have to say, hi, I'm Scareglow. Done. Packing up my bags. I'm leaving right away. Oh, I was just going to actually invite you in for... No, done. Pack up your bags, honey. We're leaving. But what do you guys think of Scareglow? Let me know down below in the comments section. Should the figure have used a painted head sculpt, or do you actually like the translucent yellow head sculpt instead? Let me know down below in the comments section. And if you are new to this channel, you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, first of all, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Turn on the bell notification so you're going to get those friendly reminders of when new videos are popping up. And while we have wrapped up the reviews, sorry, no love for Andra, at least of right now. Maybe I'm going to, if I see her for like $2. Oh, that's $2 out of my pocket. I don't know. Maybe if I find her, I might pick her up. But at least for right now, for the present time, we've wrapped up things for the Master Universe Revelations figures. But make sure, yeah, you're coming back to this channel, because there's definitely going to be a lot more videos coming your way. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.